You may recall that if we go back a year, we had the Alexis J report in Rotherham just over a year ago, followed by the Louise Casey report, also in Rotherham. Both of those reports mentioned South Yorkshire Police. So I felt the right thing to do was to commission a review, which is being publicly launched now, this morning, today, to see whether there were lessons that hadn't been learnt from other parts of South Yorkshire in the way that they clearly, I think, had in Rotherham. John is, I think, very well qualified to do this. I think you've got details of who he is and what his background is. Very briefly, he was the Chief Executive of the Youth Justice Board for England and Wales. He's a former Director of Social Services in one of the London boroughs. He's been an Inspector of Essex, I think it was, Social Services. And he's currently Chair of a Safeguarding Board in Medway. And what we're particularly interested in as we go forward now is hearing from anybody in South Yorkshire who may have experience or knowledge or information about issues around child sexual exploitation that may be very personal to them, maybe something they know about, maybe something they know as a professional, either from the less recent past or the recent past. We need to know about that, and we're inviting them now to come forward and to tell their story.
The review will take 3 months, and my intention is to report to the Commissioner at the top of the year, and our joint plan is that we will publish a report early in 2016. In the next 3 months, I'll be looking very closely at practices of South Yorkshire Police, and the twin aims are, firstly, to ensure that what happened in Rotherham didn't happen across the 3 other districts of South Yorkshire. And that secondly, that lessons that have already been set out in the J and the Casey reports have been acted upon by South Yorkshire Police and implemented, and that we can see clear evidence on the ground of a new, fresh approach, an effective approach to policing in South Yorkshire. I'm also especially keen to hear from anyone, and I really do mean anyone. I'm not now talking about just representatives of organisations, professionals working in this field, but I mean families, I mean survivors, victims, and people within the community who have perspectives on the way in which policing in this area of child sexual exploitation has been carried out and is being carried out at the moment.
What I've said to John is I want this to be swift and thorough, but swift, i.e. not long and drawn out and therefore getting more and more expensive. Initially, the South Yorkshire Police budget will have to stand the costs of this initially. Now, I clearly will go to the Home Secretary and ask for a special grant because of the financial difficulties that we are in South Yorkshire, but I recognise that initially we will have to find the money for that. Clearly there is such a history now here, and particularly in Rotherham, though not exclusively in Rotherham, that we're starting from quite a low base, I think. But anybody who's met more recently those who are involved in the public protection units, they're now being co-located in each of the districts, so that you've got police officers who are working in the area of vulnerable people, including CSE. They're located alongside local authorities, social workers, people from the NHS, Barnardo's workers, and so on. And if you meet those teams, you realise immediately that here are groups of people now who are absolutely determined to get this right. You may know that I have a victims, survivors and their families panel, and they are now meeting with serving police officers in order to get right the approach to victims and the way they're dealt with and the way they're treated. So in all sorts of ways we're doing or have been doing things for quite a long time now to try and restore some confidence and some trust. But it's just going to be slow and take a long time to do. What the people of Rotherham and elsewhere in South Yorkshire can be sure now of that is that this review is about South Yorkshire Police. So in Rotherham it's about South Yorkshire Police in Rotherham. Now we know a lot about Rotherham. We probably know more about Rotherham than almost any other borough in the country, I would think, in relation to police activity, local authority, social workers and CSE. So we're not ignoring Rotherham, not at all, but I think I think there is more to be learnt in other parts of the county than perhaps in Rotherham. But I hope that the police people of Rotherham will be reassured now that the local authority has been under scrutiny, and there have been those reports and the action that's followed from that. Now we have something specifically about the police in Rotherham.
I think the very direct answer to your question is that both Alexis J and Louise Casey's reports were written in the period that they were written, and they didn't set out to answer the question, how effective is policing now? And so I think the people of Rotherham, as the people of the other districts of South Yorkshire, what I would hope to be able to tell them at the end of the review is what policing now is like. But the most useful thing, and perhaps the unique thing of this review compared to others, is that it will try to say, and now policing is good or bad or indifferent or whatever it is, and describe that picture. And as the Commissioner said, I hope that we'll be able to make recommendations to make things, to take things even further forward than wherever I find them to be. Yeah. It will be money well spent if we're able to accurately describe to the police those parts of their current practice which are good and those that need improvement. I've always found when I've been responsible for services myself that it's helped from time to time to have someone from outside to come in and have a look and say, that's going well, these things just don't work in the way that you think they would. So I think people of Rotherham will be well served if we're able to do work of that sort for them, and that's one of my main objectives. I also think it's important that a body tries to describe afresh where all the different initiatives have reached at any one moment in time. So I'm talking not only therefore about my review, but the work of the IPCC, the work of the NCA and other policing of past offences. And I'd hope to be able to describe that when we publish our report as well.
And do you think briefly that this will help justice be done for survivors?
It'll be other people ultimately to make that judgment, but that's certainly my intention.